Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you. Thanks for checking out the channel. Oh, I missed moves so much, man. I missed the action. I missed NBA trades. I missed, the Miami Heat go out there and they bring in Terry Rozier from the Charlotte Hornets in exchange for Kyle Lowry and a first-round pick, a deal that was kicked around over the last little bit. Definitely felt like momentum was building towards that. You saw the reports that were out there. And finally, like right before the radio show goes on the air today, or maybe it was like right as we went on the air today, the news comes down. Terry Rozier has been traded to the Miami Heat in exchange for Kyle Lowry, which it's exciting, man. I do think here's the thing that I like about it from a couple of angles. One, the Miami Heat had to have recognized, everybody have had to have noticed over these last few games, especially with Bam, Jimmy, and Tyler all together, something needed to infuse some life into this trio. You have to. You have to get them excited about something. You have to breathe a little bit of life into them. The other part of it was clearly Kyle Lowry was not happy being moved to the bench. He still feels like he can contribute. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. But there was a miss basically from the start of the season of, do we want this guy to be our starting point guard? Who is our de facto point? Tyler Hero said this, days ago, and he didn't even mean it to sound disrespectful to to Kyle Lowry, but he was basically saying with Kyle out, when the hand injury happened, that I'm basically kind of like the point guard sometimes. And man, this thing has kind of felt mucked up. It really, really has. And so something had to have happened. The Heat, they have eyeballs. It's good to know they weren't going to just let this go idly by and that they needed to do something. And to bring in Terry Rozier, it's not a move all chips to the center of the table type move for the Miami Heat. It is a pick down the line, 2027 lottery protected. If that one does happen to be in the lottery, then it's moved to 2028 unprotected, and that's where they're at. So they're basically betting on downfall of the Miami Heat. But the Miami Heat needed this, man. You need a guy who can go out there and just kind of take over, who can be the go-to guy. You can't have Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler always looking at each other, being like, oh, "You're trying to take over? Is it my turn to take over? Is it your turn to take over?" No, you needed something to sound. Am I the facilitator here? Am I setting everybody up? What are we going to do? Terry Rozier is a bona fide bucket. You get a guy who's averaging 23 points a game. Has been in a little bit of a slump because he was at like over 24 at one point this year. Shooting 36% from three. And you're just really hoping that he can just infuse that life. The other thing that I love about this from a Terry Rozier standpoint is the guy is like a D Wade disciple. He loves Dwayne Wade, was of course part of the Last Dance jersey exchange. And apparently it was like texting Wade at 4 a.m. early in the season that he wanted to get his part of the D Wade jersey exchange. And so you bring him aboard, and it's just awesome that Dwayne always has this imprint on the organization that people want to come here and be part of what he has done. Jimmy and notwithstanding, Victor Oladipo, guys like this, Spider Mitchell's obviously his interest has been there as well. So now you bring in a guy who truly is a D Wade guy, from the time you can go look at his tweets from years back about how much number 3 means to him in this organization. He was retweeting Udonis Haslam's jersey retirement. And I think he's going to really dig going from Charlotte to here in a winning situation once again. And listen, he was scary Terry for a reason. Had some nice playoff moments with the Boston Celtics. So it's not like he's completely nervous or going to be completely overwhelmed by the big stage. I think he's going to embrace that, being back a part of it. Some of the quotes that came out of practice, and I've only gotten able to because I've been on the air. I have not seen videos of practice. I wasn't there covering practice today, but some of the quotes that had come out that I'd seen from Tyler Hero was, I think it's time for an energy boost around here. This is from Tim Reynolds. For sure, Terry's a great player, and we appreciate Kyle and everything that he's done for us, which I don't know the tone of it for Tyler Hero, but it was probably, it kind of feels like, yeah, him and Kyle just were always a weird mix. Just, I don't know what it was. It was. I don't think it's personal. I don't think Kyle Lowry had a lot of personal issues with anybody on the team. I think that Kyle Lowry, obviously at a different age point, kind of could walk around like he owned the joint because he was Jimmy Butler's guy and was going to be acting and behaving like Jimmy Butler and because of his credentials and because of, hey, I'm Jimmy Butler's guy. Like, come on, I'm not always going to buy into everything. And that's fine. Like, not everybody has to be, Heat culture to the core. I do think that he had a lot of respect for Eric Spoelstra. And I think Spo had a lot of respect for his game as well. I don't think this was as toxic as it was made out to be at times. And Kyle, at least from my experience, wasn't like this toxic person to the media. Didn't love the media the most. Like, some guys are way more like, oh, I'll do extra or I'll do whatever you ask. Like, he's going to do his sessions and that's it. But was always professional and cordial and very thoughtful in answers, typically whenever I dealt with him or did one-on-ones with him or anything like that. I enjoy those. But I do think that, even he had to realize, like, what Kyle was brought in for and what the team ended up being were just two different things. I think that he always flourished the most when this team was shorthanded, which happened. I mean, he had to fill some gaps when the team was shorthanded from time to time. And now, when everybody's back together, it just felt like he was kind of lost. And then you have more guys who are emerging and more guys, even your young guys have the ball in their hands. Nico has the ball in his hands. Jaime has the ball in his hands. Like, who needs the quintessential point guard? And then, like, he's not up and running. Like, he's always trying to chuck the ball downfield and get that going with that Kyle chaos. So I just think the idea was fine, but the execution definitely wasn't what you thought you were getting. And I think part of that was Kyle's age, and I think part of it, and age and injuries, and I think a big part of it was just the roster developing the way that it did. But he had big playoff moments. He was big in that Knicks series last year. He had some big moments in Eastern Conference Finals. And, it's not like he was completely useless, but never really lived up to, obviously, the big chunk of the salary cap that he had. And I think that was, the disappointing thing, and then never like really fawned over, I'm Heat culture, this or this. But he was a good teammate. Like, Bam even had the quote today to Tim where he said that he was one of, if not my favorite teammate. He's a big brother. And he was always, him and Bam, he was always, trying to work with Bam, always sung the praises to Bam. One time, the summer after his first season, Bam went out to Las Vegas to go work with him. So I don't, and we know his close relationship with Jimmy. So I don't think it's a hostility thing. I just think it got to an awkward point, and sometimes things run their course, and it's not always about, oh, this guy doesn't like this guy doesn't like that. But what I do think Terry Rozier is, I think Terry Rozier, kind of like Kevin Love last year. Kevin Love comes from this situation in Cleveland where he's kind of like on the outs, and then comes in and is like fully embraced, and the team, even though maybe like the play wasn't as great with Kevin right away, the locker room felt like a much happier, healthier place. And I think with Rozier, he's been stuck in Charlotte and this whole reclamation project down there with LaMelo Ball, and LaMelo Ball fans thinking that he's taking away from Melo, and he could only really flourish when Melo was out. Now he gets to come down here, and it's like, yeah, we need some of that. We need some of a guy who wants to take over. We need a guy who can light it up a little bit. I mean, dude, you're watching the league right now, and you're seeing guys put up 70 points or 50 points or 30-point triple doubles. And it's like with the Miami Heat in the regular season, there's so few of those signature performances that something had to be done. You're not going to go out there, as much as this team identifies with winning in the mud, and Pat's going to tell Eric to win in the mud. And as I was saying, the wins can be ugly, but as long as the record's pretty, once the wins are ugly and you start a losing streak, then you need to figure some things out. And that's where the Miami Heat were at. That's where they were with this whole situation with their trades. And I think the interesting thing is going to be, from this point going forward with them, is this the only move that is going to happen for the Miami Heat? Because this was about the safest move that they could pull off, that I think is an easy improvement, but it was not like they've put all their chips at the table. Are there anything is there anything else that's coming down the pipe for Miami? I don't know. I do think that I think Miami's going to probably take some time with Terry. And according to Barry, I'm recording this in the afternoon on Tuesday. If Kyle Lowry reports he could debut Wednesday against Grizzlies, if not, I imagine he's going to do it Thursday against the Celtics. But I think the Heat will probably take a step back and see, all right, what does this project look like? How does this all work together? What is the rotation? Because Bo has been saying, like, the lineups and the combinations matter, and seeing how he's going to stagger all these things is going to be very, very interesting to see. And then, of course, it sounds like we're getting close to getting Jaime Jaquez back with him practicing. Injury designation will probably be out fairly soon on where Miami's at on getting him back. But if you get Jaime, which, I mean, his loss has been felt, man. His loss has definitely been felt. So if you get Jaime back on top of getting Terry Rozier and just see where that all formulates, see how him and Tyler work well together and see where that all goes out. I'm very, very curious to see what this turns into for the Miami Heat, or if there are still some issues and they still feel like there's another maneuver that needs to be made. There's another fence that needs to kind of be mended to get to our point where we want to be, which is actually competing. But you have seen now every East team has gone through some type of change. And I just think Miami was probably at the point where, like, as great and as encouraged as we are by Jaime Jaquez and the young guys, we need to do something else, especially when we're getting nothing from this big chunk of our salary cap. Kyle was in just such an offensive funk. And the problem with that is, like, when you have all these guys there, what's going to get him out of it? Because if he's now going to the bench, is he going to go and start taking crazy shots to try and get out of it? Is he going to play outside of his game? So I just think it was a necessary move from that standpoint. Curious to see where he ends up. Apparently the early reports are that he's not going to get bought out. That was my initial reaction to it. There is some Knicks fodder that's out there already on him, which would be interesting. If he ends up on an Eastern Conference team, then he's a Philadelphia guy. That's always kind of been one where they've been circling around and seeing if they'd get into the Kyle Lowry game. But I don't know, man. For me personally, I don't see Kyle Lowry as a guy who is adding a ton to the East contenders. Like, I don't think, Boston, Milwaukee all kind of had their point guard situation situated. Philadelphia with mother bleeping Maxey playing his ass off the way that he is. Cleveland, I don't see that as being a fix. So I don't really know where the match is out in the East. Maybe out West, there's something there that tickles his fancy. But then there's also some restrictions on, like, at apron teams and who's able to sign him as a buyout. So maybe that's why they want to try and work out a trade and see if he can get him to a better location, and maybe they can get some more assets for him. But the Heat had to do something. I'm glad that they did something, and I'm very, very curious to see what the results of this trade are. And if there's anything else going, it's fun to just be back. It's fun to see the franchise back awake and back in the game. That's not just for buyout guys. Like, you couldn't, it would have been very bad to just let the fan base know we're going to just kind of sit this one out. We're going to just sit by and let this all play. You can't keep doing that. So I'm excited to see what Terry Rozier brings to the table for this team. He cooks the Heat. I mean, he's been kicking the Heat's ass for a long time. I know that there'll be, like, looter and a riot kind of accusations on him. But the thing with this is, like, look, there'd be times where you're watching the Charlotte Hornets and you knew Terry Rozier was going to be the only guy who's probably scoring for them, especially with the injuries that they've had. And he was still getting his numbers and doing it at a pretty efficient rate. Now he's on a team where he's not going to be the defensive focus. You hope that threat with him in the pick and roll with Bam is going to be absolutely, can absolutely flourish if you think of the ideas about it. Has had some lob threats there that were definitely there in Charlotte as well. So he's used to that. And as far as the defensive concerns, always a concern, but it's not like those weren't there anyway. When you bring in a 6'1" guard, like, it's literally the same measurements. 6'1", 6'1". I mean, his wingspan's bigger than Kyle Lowry's is. So I think there's a difference there. Kyle was always good at that, like, those going up against bigger guys and stripping the ball and getting blocks. And of course, we know how great he was at getting into the paint for charges. And so, but I think that he can infuse a lot of that into players as well. And I think that this is a guy, because of the respect that he has for the organization and especially the franchise icon of the organization, I think that you're going to have a guy who's thrilled. I think actually the report was from Barry Jackson. What was he saying? Rozier thrilled about the trade, according to Associate. It was what Barry Jackson said. I think he's going to be stoked. I can't wait to see what he's going to bring to the table and what this version of the Heat looks like.